something that has been on my mind a lot for actually quite a few years now. And it's something, it's an incident that happened meeting with a prospective client a few years ago. And it's stuck with me ever since. And I've thought about it a lot. And I've adjusted how I approach companies based on this one incident, probably more than any other experience I've had in my business. And so I'm going to tell you that kind of the story of this incident with a prospective client. And they didn't become a client, so that makes it even more interesting. So about probably 5, 6 years ago, we received a call from a company, a small business, having problems with their firewall. It said, "Hey, can you come out and look at our firewall and fix it? We're having some issues getting connected to the internet, dropping connections, and so on." And I told the guy at the time, I said, "Hey, we're a managed service provider. We really are kind of a full service outsourced company. So we don't really do just break fix, things like that. But I'd be happy to talk to you about our managed services. And if you're a fit, we'll fix your firewall, put you on an agreement, taking care of you and securing your environment going forward." He said, "Well, I don't think I really have a need for that, but I would like to learn more about that." So he invited me out to his machine shop and business, all in one. And I got to learn a lot about his business. So as we're sitting there talking, terrific guy. I mean, sharp, third generation machine shop owner, successful business, very, very specialized in the industry that he worked in. And so as we're talking, there's a typical kind of a dog and pony show that we do. We want to understand what are your pain points, what are your risk tolerance, what do you have in place, and so on. So as I walked into the building before we started talking, I noticed a lot of things that are kind of these kind of talking points. I wouldn't call them red flags, but they're indicators that maybe there's an underlying problem in the organization from an IT standpoint. Things like Ethernet cables not ran inside the walls, no labeling on any of the patch panels I saw within the office, a bunch of different brands of computer equipment, different aged equipment from many different types of generations. And just anyway, the place was just kind of felt very much like a hodgepodge. And, when I see that, that means one of two things, really. One is they are in desperate need of someone to come in and kind of consolidate, organize, structure, put them on the right path technology-wise, or it means that they don't spend money and they don't value IT, and that's the way it's going to be, and probably not a good fit for us. So I want to get to the bottom of that. So first I started talking to him about risk. It's always kind of my start, because everything we do in IT these days is about risk, reducing your risk, reducing your risk of downtime, reducing your risk of compromise from a threat actor that can hurt your reputation in your business. So we started with talking about risk. And so my first question, as I said, if you got ransomware, and ransomware, of course, you've all heard about that by now. If you got ransomware, so I said, if you got that and you lost all the data on your computers, what would it do to your business? He said, "Well, really, it's not a big deal, because I do have a backup on that device." And he points at a little network attached storage device on the network. And I said, "Okay, is that device connected to the same network?" "Yes, it is." I said, "Okay, so let's go one step further. Let's say the ransomware gang got into that device and they destroyed that backup. How bad would that hurt your business?" And he said, "Well, come with me." And he walks me into a room, and he's got all these binders full of blueprints. And I say to him, I said, "Okay, great. You've got all these blueprints, so you can recover from these, correct?" And he said, "Yes, I can pull any one of these and I can make any part we've ever made." I said, "Okay, let's go one step further. Building burns down. If your building burns down, you've lost your backups, you've lost your computers with all the data on them, and you've lost all your blueprints." And I think at this point he's getting a little irritated. People do, because in a way, it's like I am questioning their decision-making skills for how they've built out their network. But that's part of what we do. We want to pull that out and really pull that thread and understand what is your reasoning for why you take the risks that you do in your business. And we all take risk. It's just at different levels. So I pull that thread, and he says, "Come with me." And he walks me out to the shop. And it's a machine shop. It's been in business since the 40s. The people working there look like they've been working since the 40s. I mean, Rosie Riveter was probably back there somewhere hammering away on something. So he walks me out in the shop, and he takes me to a shelf, and it's just got rows and rows of parts on this shelf. And he picks one up, and he says, "This is," and he names it, and blah, blah, blah. And he says, "We designed this in this year." And so he says, "So I can take this part and I can pull the dimensions off this part, and I can make that part without much effort. So even if the building burned down, I doubt it's going to burn up all the steel in the building. And if I had to, I could pull all the data that I need to make that part again just off of that part. And if all these parts disappeared, I could go to the field and pull one of the machines out, because we have machines that we've supported all the way back to 1940 that are still running, that I could pull parts off that. I can make it work. I said, okay, what is the cost for you to be able to do that? And he said, well, it might be pretty costly initially to get that data back. Then he flipped the script on me. He said, but what's it going to cost me to have you put all of your security controls in that protects me and guarantees me that I won't have to go to that place? And so of course I say, I can't guarantee anything. No one can guarantee anything, but I can put enough controls in that the likelihood, your risk of that happening goes down dramatically. And he said, well, tell me about what that would look like. And I said, well, we'd replace all your computers. And as soon as I said it, I thought, I see where we're going with this. He's doing dollars and cents in his head. This makes sense. And so replace all your computers. And I don't remember how many computers he had. Let's just say it was 10. So in his mind, he's like, okay, 10 computers, roughly at 1,000, 2,000, let's go ahead and do 2,000 with labor to get them configured, installed, and migrated. So that's $20,000 of computers. Okay. And then how much is that going to cost me per month to be able to get support for those computers? Well, on our service plans at that time, it was around $120 to $300. Now, per month per computer or user, basically. Just think of a one-to-one for the ease of this discussion, what I'm talking about here. So $120 gets you a pretty good core subset of security with support. $300 gets you hardware as a service, where you're leasing all your computers through us and we maintain them and swap them out if problems happen. We take all that responsibility. And those numbers are not hammered in stone. I'm just giving you some rough round numbers for this conversation. So he's doing the math. He's saying, okay, so it's going to cost me at minimum $1,200 a month. Then I got to spend $20,000 to buy computers, where it's going to cost me $300 a month. And then you're going to provide me computers. So $300 a month, $3,000 a month, and you're going to make sure I don't have any problems. Well, I can't make sure you don't have any problems, but I can do a really good job with state-of-the-art security controls. Me being an IT guy, I start rattling off things like privileged access management, security incident event management. We're going to log aggregate. We're going to know what comes in. We're going to know what goes out. All these things that I'm talking to him about, trying to help him understand that we're bringing a great amount of value. And he says to me, so the first year I'm going to be out 20 grand on computers. I'm going to be out 1,200 a month. 1,200 a month times 12 months is whatever that is. I can't do the math in my head, like 16,000. I don't know. Anyway, so he's like, okay, so if I do all those things for the first year, it's going to cost me X. I figure it's going to cost me this much to go out into the field and pull parts off of all these machines and be able to write all that up. And I don't remember what he said. He said maybe $50,000 with flying out to a couple of sites to pull the parts. And he said, and it's going to cost us probably downtime of maybe a week. And he said, that'll probably cost me X dollars. So what you're telling me, this is him talking to me, what you're telling me is I need to spend about $20,000 a year to keep from having a problem that I can overcome for less than $50,000 if it ever happens. Like, oh, it's a pretty good risk calculation. I was pretty blown away with that. And I said, you know what? You're right. We're not a good fit for you. Why am I not a good fit? Well, it could be a lot of different reasons I'm not a good fit. But number one, I'm not a break fix company. I cannot cost effectively staff and maintain my organization doing break fix work. That's why almost every IT company in the world became a managed service provider, because now we have revenue on contract to be able to come in and take care of people. So what is the lesson of this? The main lesson, what I'm getting at with this entire point is, if you know your risk as well as this gentleman did, then you're in good shape. Most people don't know their risk like that. A lot of people lean on the IT guy and say, hey, I don't want to have any risk. The IT guy comes in and says, or the MSP says, great, I can get rid of all your risk. Again, $120 to $300 per user per month. And the CFO, the financial guy, is looking at his bottom line saying, I can't afford that. I won't be in business if that's true. So find me a happy medium. And the IT person says, there is no happy medium. You got to take everything. And there's this back and forth. And eventually what happens is the CFO, the CEO, whoever's making the decision in the organization, figures out what they think is the minimum viable deniability. So what is the minimum I need to do to keep from getting in trouble? And let's do that. And that happens a lot of the time. All right. So what I'm going to give you right now is not what I would call minimum viable deniability or plausible deniability, if I want to go back to Nixon. I'm old. I don't know who else here is old, but so if I give you like the core building block where you start as a business to make sure you are recoverable, is to make sure that your data, the mission critical data that your organization has, can be recovered in a time amount that is reasonable to your organization. That's the smallest building block that I want to touch on today. There's a bunch of others. We got business email compromise, reputational damage. There's all kinds of other stuff that you should also be concerned about. But let's just talk about recovering your data from just about any incident, be it ransomware, data corruption, fire, flood, hurricane, whatever. To have your data where you can recover it somewhere in a certain amount of time is the smallest viable building block. So let's talk about that. All right. So first and foremost, you got to have backups of your equipment that you use. For example, network switching, firewalls, things like that do have configurations on them. Most modern devices are now stored in the cloud. You don't have to worry about that. Cisco Meraki, Fortinet, Sophos, SonicWall, those companies will have a system where you have a subscription, you pay annually, and your configuration is stored in the cloud. So fire, flood, whatever, equipment's destroyed, drop new equipment in, it pulls down the config, you're back in business. So most are like that, but you need to know for sure. Other equipment's just dumb and you don't really care, like a switch that doesn't do anything. It's just as a port aggregate or a port distribution point to be able to connect a lot of devices. Those don't matter either. Okay. So don't worry about those. But if you have devices that are smart but are not tied to a cloud, then you might want to do a export of those configurations so you can rebuild your network if after a major catastrophe. Okay, so that's the first thing, and that's not a lot of effort. That's usually a manual backup, say quarterly, annually, whatever, or using a tool that backs up those configurations like Auvik or any of the other ones out there. All right, so what we really care about is business critical data. So think about your ERP system, your medical record system if you're a medical practitioner, your ERP, your CRM, all your different major business software systems. So a lot of those will run on your on-premise hardware, and some of them will run in a cloud environment, and some will be web delivered where you don't even know where the server's at. We don't care about the web app, web delivered ones that you have no idea where the server's at. We care about the ones that are on cloud infrastructure that you control, or on-premise servers, physical servers where you have databases and applications running in your office. Okay, so let's get focused on that. Just when you completely control the server, either in Azure, Amazon AWS clouds, Google, or you have on-prem servers. Those are the ones we're talking about today. So first question, do you even have backups of your data? A lot of companies will pay an organization to set up backups, and maybe they add and remove servers, and sometimes those servers are not being backed up because the person who set up the backup wasn't the same one who brought in the next server. So make sure that all of your servers that you have to produce products and be functional are backed up, and you need to do that on a schedule. Once a year, have someone go through, make sure you have backups of the data, because systems change. Procedures, especially in smaller business, are not always there to make sure that all of the data is being backed up when changes happen. You can have multiple hands in that cookie jar, and not each one of them is going to be worried about what the other ones are doing. Okay. The next one, are backups tested? Do you test a restore? When I say tested, a lot of people are like, oh, my backup sends me a report and it says that it was successful. That's not a test. It is a test. Like a lot of software will run a test to make sure the data is readable and so on. But the ability to restore that data onto dissimilar hardware, onto a different cloud environment, onto a different hypervisor host, that can be where it gets tricky. So what we say is you should have a schedule to do a full restoration onto whatever you think you'd be restoring onto in the future, be it a different virtual host, a different cloud provider, different hardware, whatever it might be, but do an actual test. Okay, that is a full restore. Now, depending on your backup software you use, we are a Veeam shop and we love Veeam. We think it's the best backup solution in the world. There's very specialized software out there as well, depending on what industries you're in. A lot of the more advanced softwares allow you to do a restore, which is like a just-in-time restore. In other words, you can set up a restore and within seconds be in that restoration. And what it does is it's only restoring the files necessary to let you function on that restored server. It's a great way to test quickly without restoring terabytes and terabytes of data. You get it operational, you log in, you make sure that you can access your database, that you can look up some patient records. That's your validation that it is functional. Then you shut it down, then you destroy that restoration, you go back to backing up. Okay, so there's ways to do that. You want to do that. Now, you also want to receive those successes and failure backup notifications. Now, here's the deal. Depending on how often you back up, that can become just spam where you ignore it or your IT team ignores it. So we recommend using a third-party tool, or if your software has it, any tool that will tell you when a failure happens or when nothing happens. So in other words, if a success is expected and you didn't get a success or a failure, that means that whatever the notification system is, be it part of your backup system, has failed completely, and you don't want to find yourself 6 months down the road, have a major failure, thinking everything works fine because you never got any failures. Well, that's how you know. So be sure to do that. Okay. And there's lots of software out there to do that, and services and people that can do it, including us. So our backup stored offsite and onsite. We want an on-site backup. That's what most companies already think about when they think of backups is I've got a server here, I'm backing it up to a external source here, be it a USB drive, tape drive, or another repository storage area, network attached storage, whatever. But you're backing up a local copy. And you want to do that. So if your building burns down, you're going to lose that too, right? But if you have a corruption or a minor problem or a file got deleted that you need to recover from one of your servers, you can do that really quick when it's on the same network segment, okay? That's why you have local backups. It's quicker restoration, okay? So if that happens, you can get back into business. But then you need to have an offsite backup. And most these days go to a cloud repository. Now, you may be a big enough business that you have servers at 2 different locations and you're doing replication and all kinds of high-end stuff. This is not really the conversation for you. You shouldn't even be listening to this. You should already have all these things in place. But if you are a smaller provider and you need to have backups, you need to have them off in a cloud repository. And there's tons of really low-cost cloud repository providers out there. Again, we can help you with that if you're questioning how to do that. Happy to do so. So have an on-site and an off-site backup. So the next thing is your off-site backup should be what we call air-gapped. Now, air-gapped, the traditional meaning of air-gapped means that your backup pushes out to somewhere and there's no way to read anything on that server except through that software being pushed out, okay? So you're pushing a copy of your backups to a cloud repository or an offsite backup, but from there, anything on that network cannot manipulate that system over here, okay? The other version of air gap, which is the extreme version, just says, I do a backup to a drive or some kind of physical device, I carry that out and I put it somewhere else, okay? We don't really like that because people forget to take the drives, they go on vacation, the drives get lost, all kinds of things go wrong. We want to have what we call the air gap of no direct network connectivity to a offsite backup repository. You can let the backup software authenticate to be able to dump the backups into a third-party location somewhere else, okay? Next thing, your offsite and your onsite backup should use dissimilar authentication from the rest of your network. Years ago, everything was single sign-on. We wanted everything to use the same sign-on from Active Directory or what have you, and it just made everything easier. That is dangerous now in this regard. If your network gets compromised and your attacker needs to basically destroy all ability for you to recover so he can hold you hostage, he's going to go after your backups. If he compromises an administrative account in your network and it's the same login used on your offsite backups and your onsite backups, he's just going to go wipe those out. We've seen it firsthand, okay? So last little bit on air gapping. If you air gap your systems, we saw this happen. We got a call one day, a larger company in town had gotten hit with ransomware, asked us about helping them with recovery. And what we discovered was they had their backups, totally dissimilar authentication. They had encryption and rest, encryption and transit over to their offsite backups. Fantastic. But they used the same password and a similar login to access the offsite as they did the onsite. And although we call it air gap because it's a separate network segment, there was direct access from the primary network to the offsite network. The attacker clearly went from the onsite network to the offsite network, found devices, tried every login and password they could, were able to discern the new authentication domain or whatever it was, and logged in, destroyed their backups, and they could not recover. Okay. That company had a lot of custom software that was lost. They had to rebuild from developer copies and a bunch of other nightmare stuff. Okay. You can also do, just to touch on this a little bit, you can do immutable backups where you write, but you never overwrite and they can't be edited. And that's another great thing to do to protect your backups. So I talked about encryption at rest, encryption in transit, and then do you have enough backups? This is a big one. We've seen large hospitals, large practices, large businesses that don't carry very much backup. They may carry 5, 6, 7 days of actual recoverable backup. That's probably not enough. And when you get into ransomware recovery scenarios, just know that the dwell time of a ransomware attack goes like this. Someone gets into your network and they do all this scouting on the network, and they're ready to push the button, the nuclear option, to encrypt your systems, but their goal is to go in and make it impossible for you to recover that whole time. So they're embedding everywhere they can in your systems so that even if you recover, it'll kick off ransomware again and you will be encrypted and you won't be able to recover. What that means is you're doing incremental backups, you're backing up your servers and other infrastructure, and every time you back it up, you're getting a snapshot of the operating system, all the running processes, including the ransomware person who's embedded himself in your network or into your systems. And when you recover, it's going to be active again. So there's 2 ways to recover from that. Well, there's probably a lot of ways. I'm going to talk about 2 ways. The first way is to do an offline recovery of your data. So that's offline, and someone goes through the files, the flat files, trying to find any embedded services and processes and kill those. So when it spins back up, it cannot launch ransomware again. Then once it's up, you can go through and clean out all the rest of the stuff, run all your scans, get everything nice and clean, and then hopefully go back to production, while always fearing that you missed something that you'll find and it'll blow up some point in the future. That sucks. So even when people do that type of recovery, usually they just recover it enough to get their data out, build a fresh system, import the data in, and start off clean, just to have that knowing, the billions or trillions or whatever files and code lines in Windows and applications isn't corrupted. It gives you a better chance of knowing you're going to be safe. So then they spin those systems back up. The second way of doing that is to go to a way far past point in time. So if you can determine roughly when you think the attacker got into your systems, you can go way back before that point in time, do a restoration of a clean version of your infrastructure. Then you just take the files like database backups and other things, and you just import those into that, patch it all up, get it up to date with the latest blah, 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 and then you can be operational before the attacker got in. And that's another little bit clearer for you as maybe an IT person or an owner to know, okay, at least I'm working on an instance that was clean at one time. I'm only moving files, not memory resident issues that could pop up and bite me later, or registry things that have been changed. I'm just moving the files and data to that server, and my chance of being ransomware free in the future is higher. Okay, so that's the other way that we do backup recovery. Okay, last thing. If you have a major catastrophe, lose all your stuff, and you need to do a recovery, how long will it take you to download your data from the cloud repository? And 2, where are you going to put it? If you said to me that my recovery time objective was 1 hour, but you have 10 terabytes of data on a 100 meg internet connection, I'm going to tell you it's not possible. You cannot easily move 10 terabytes down in 1 hour on a 100 meg internet connection. You don't have enough bandwidth for it, okay? So calculating how much time it takes to download a full backup is part of deciding what your recovery time objective is. So keep that in mind. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Backups are super critical. If you have really, really good backups, then recoverability is highly, highly likely. It doesn't prevent you from getting ransomware. There's still things like endpoint detection and response, privileged access management, security incident management systems that are incredibly valuable, and more that are incredibly valuable to protect your environment from ever having an issue. But your calculation should also be how long does it take to recover and how much does that impact your business? And if you know that, it helps you make better decisions on the other tools you use. All right, that's all I've got. I hope this is helpful. As always, we're happy to help you guys. I mean, that is our business. It's how we pay our bills. So if you have any questions or concerns or want to learn more about how to create a very robust recovery environment for your organization, feel free to reach out. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.